Hello and welcome to Cinema Eclectica. We are the Geek Show's dedicated movie podcast, and this is the first of our 3 end-of-year specials. Now, normally in our end-of-year specials, we have our top 10 of the year. That's coming in the next 2 episodes. But before that, we're doing something that we used to do in the main show, but we're doing a bit closer to Christmas now, just because it feels right, which is our alternative Christmas movies. So for that, I've been joined by Aidan.
I have converted to anarchy.
And Rob.
Auf Wiedersehen.
It's a strange time of year in a lot of ways, Christmas. We have some pretty strange movies lined up from you, but who wants to go first with an alternative Christmas movie?
I can if you want.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mine has about 4 separate titles.
Right.
Actually, no. It's got 5 because, well, I'll get to that. But its title is 3615 Code Pierre Noël in French.
Of course.
But it also goes by Dial Code Santa Claus, and it also goes by Deadly Games.
Okay.
Which is, it's a thing. It's a 1989 movie directed by René Manzor. And all I can really preface it by saying is, Home Alone stole this.
Yes.
Like, pretty much. I know, how dare I suggest that Home Alone isn't that original? Shock horror. The gods of cinema strike me down.
I love how every time a movie ends with a fight in a house, someone always goes, just rip it off Home Alone. God help
well,
these
no,
people.
but this is literally Home Alone. This is
God help these people if they ever see Last House on the Left, is all I'm saying.
Well, in this, it's got an adorable kid, 10-year-old. He's set up and he's dressed as Rambo, basically.
Mm.
And it's not just his costume. He is rocking the most perfect Pat Sharp mullet, too.
What for our international audience there?
Okay, who could be an American or foreign mullet of choice?
That dude with the nunchucks from Ghost World?
That'll do. The dude with the nunchucks from Ghost World. So, proper high caliber mullet we're talking here. He's son to one son, as in one child, not 5 houses living in the same place, and it makes no sense. Why is this happening? Home Alone is stupid. One child living in this house with his very well-to-do mother sort of owns a very... It's not really established what it is, but it seems like she runs like a shopping centre. She's got like a big event on just before Christmas. Loads of things going on. So she leaves the son at home with a grandfather who's he's lost his sight, basically. He can only see sort of vague shapes. It goes into his vision every now and again.
Yeah.
But as much as that kid is like a little badass, and he's got all these traps sent around the house, like a door opens and there's like a net thing. He very, very much cares for his granddad. It's adorable how much he loves his granddad. And the granddad's always a presence in the movie. But also, where his mother works, there's this one rogue, let's call him, who, as the film starts, it has this sort of classic, loads of kids are on the street playing snowball fights with each other. This guy turns up, wants to play with them. All the kids say, "Who the hell is this weirdo?" And they all run off. That's as far as his establishing motif goes. But yeah, his mother wants a load of Santas. He becomes one of the Santas. A kid says, "You're not Santa. Your face is weird." So he gets a bit of a grump on and decides to dress up as Santa and steal some stuff and get up to some hijinks. He's got like the Santa costume on, so he sprays his beard with, I don't know, fake snow or something, so it looks like his beard's like properly white.
Yeah.
And what follows from that is basically, it starts off as the kid who's not very able to stand up for himself, not very able to defend himself, and then he discovers his confidence, and then it's basically the film which Home Alone stole the idea from.
Yeah.
I mean, there was that thing a few years ago, wasn't it, how John Carpenter said Space Prison Movie is a rip-off of Escape from New York?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Was it Lockdown, the movie?
Something like that, yeah.
If that got through court, this wouldn't even have... It wouldn't... I mean, it is literally a like-for-like remake.
Right.
But the difference between that and this is much darker. And as the bad guy, the bad Santa, turns up, kills the kid's dog, like stabs him in the head.
Wow.
So didn't have that in Home Alone, did they?
No.
It has a genuine sense of danger, because it's not played for laughs. There's laughs in it, but it's more of like a dark sense of humour than it is, oh, look, the man fell in his bum bum. Isn't that funny? The man stepped through a big nail and he surely get lead poisoning and die horribly for that. Oh, he got a flamethrower on his face. That's hilarious. Whereas this, it's sort of very... My problem with Home Alone, as if you haven't guessed that I have one, I've been sort of subtle in hinting at it, haven't I? But my problem with Home Alone is, in the space of, I don't know how long it's supposed to be, a couple of hours, the traps he set up are incredibly detailed.
Yes, yeah.
No kid of that age, let's say he's about 10, because the kid in Deadly Games is 10. No way a 10-year-old could set all that up.
Yeah.
And it's very telling because, in this case, this kid he's very gifted mechanic. He can fix a car, he can make all this sort of electronical equipment, and it's got 80s computers in. 80s computers are the best computers, let me just say that.
Why did we ever move away from BBC Micros?
Because they're beautiful computers. But it's just when you see, it's one of these things, isn't it? You see two films placed next to each other, they could be very similar, whatever, but when you see the real vision of what it could be, like with all of its dark edges, with all of its potential, with all of its weirdness, with all of the mullets and the kids dressed up as Rambo. And I'm not got into the reason why the kid because the kid invites what he thinks is Santa to his house. Do you know why?
Yeah.
Basically, right? He wants to kidnap Santa so he can prove to all the other kids that he's real.
Yeah.
And shock horror, it goes badly for him. But when you see, going back to that point I was making there, when you see these two films put next to each other, one which is what's and all this idea, and the other one which is basically all the roughness and edges sanded off, it really makes my issues with Home Alone stand out all that more, really. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed Dalco, Santa, or Deadly Games, or 3615 Code Pierre Noel. I love these titles. I think fundamentally, because it has that real sense of alternative Christmas movie about it, where it is a Christmas movie. It's set at Christmas. It's got a Santa character in it. But at the same time, as well as being full of danger, it's full of heart.
Yeah.
And a lot of anti-Christmas movies can just use that as an excuse to just turn the nihilism up to 1,000 and just have everybody die in horrible situations. I know, say like Black Christmas, which is kind of what happens there. It's a classic. It's a classic, but it's nihilistic as all chuff.
Yeah.
But it's alternative and full of heart. And that's a nice balance, I think. And to see this sort of being rediscovered as a Christmas movie, in America, admittedly, we in the UK haven't got a clue what this is. But to see it rediscovered in somewhere is really refreshing and really just warm and nice, I think. So there's that movie.
So I'll go next, I think, because I do worry that with all of this Father Christmas stuff at this time of year, we are in danger of forgetting the true meaning of Christmas Day, which is, of course, the birth of the Antichrist.
Praise be to Antichrist.
Yes. That is what happens on Christmas Day in the Spanish horror comedy The Day of the Beast by Alex de la Iglesias, which came out in 1995. Got a lot of attention for him, which he hasn't necessarily followed up yet.
I know why it's got a lot of attention. Its concept tells you why.
It's absolutely outrageous. Yes. But he had an English language film after that, Perdita Durango, which was based on the same series of novels that David Lynch's Wild at Heart was based on. I think while Wild at Heart did good money for a David Lynch movie, it was probably not the greatest choice to try and launch an ongoing series out of. So you went back.
And also Perdita Prita Django is also incredibly controversial and lots of rape in it.
Yes, yeah, and it has an acting role for Alex Cox, which is how you can tell something's a bit scuzzy.
Yes.
So yes, he's been a bit intermittent since then. This is probably the closest thing he's had to a consensus hit, which is impressive because it is mad. It's about a priest, Father Angel Barataruya, played by Alex Angulo, who has devoted himself to committing as many sins as possible on Christmas Eve. Now, there's obviously a strain of kind of anti-clerical humour in Spanish cinema that goes back to something like Buñuel's Viridiana, the movie so good it got its director exiled. But this is something different. But Father Angel isn't corrupt or unpleasant character in any way. He's quite a clear-cut hero. For you see, even when he does horrible things like go up to a dying man in an ambulance and tell him you're going to hell just for the badness of it, he does have a greater purpose. He is trying to commit enough sins to go through with a ritual to birth the Antichrist on Christmas Day, because of course the Antichrist must be the antithesis of Christ up to and including keeping the same birthday, so he can then kill the Antichrist and stop the apocalypse. Now, I know what you're thinking, it's a roundabout kind of a plan, but it is a plan, and he drags some unusual collaborators into it. There's Santiago Segura as Jose Maria, a giggly metalhead who he recruits when he walks into his record shop, asks for the most satanic music he has. He checks it for backwards messages, but fantastically Jose Maria says, I don't know why you're doing that, it's death metal, it'll just sound exactly the same backwards.
Much like what death metal is anyway.
Yes.
Whoa. I'll have no metal shaming here.
I will continue doing it.
He also includes in the mission my favourite character in a whole film full of potential favourite characters, Professor Caven, played by Armando Di Razza, a bizarre kind of mystic TV host who appears in this set that is constructed of astonishing kind of early 90s computer graphics, giving these astoundingly cheesy New Age proclamations. And of course, when a character is presented to you as this much of a hippy-dippy mystic fraud, the obvious direction to go is that, yes, they are right. They are absolutely in tune with the mysterious forces of the universe, and the mysterious forces of the universe have chosen this show-busy moron to be their vessel. So part of what it is kind of a buddy comedy with these three going through a series of occult adventures, but there is also a sense of real stake to it. You get the sense that Father Angel's mission is going to be dangerous from the unforgettable pre-credits sequence where he tries to enlist another priest in his mission, and just as that other priest agrees, a huge stone crucifix in the church therein suddenly topples over and crushes the other priest flat. So clearly the forces of darkness will go to any lengths to prevent Father Angel from completing his mission. It is very pacey, very funny, particularly when Father Angel needs to find a virgin to complete the ritual, which, you know, it's a bit of an indelicate thing for a priest to be asking.
Mm-hmm.
There is also a sense of balance in its skepticism that I quite enjoyed. The fact that all three of the main characters are such ridiculous figures means that you were never quite certain how much of the occult mythology that the film unfolds is going to turn out to be true or not. And there is a fantastic moment which deserves to go in the all-time occult moments in Cinema Hall of Fame, where they've just about convinced themselves that the last ritual they did was nonsense and can't possibly work, when an enormous horned black goat suddenly turns up in the room with them.
Okay.
So it's not taking itself seriously at all. It has, I think, one of the few instances of valid product placement in cinema, where the three of them are trying to escape from a block of flats, and they have to make their way out of the window and climb down an enormous neon Schweppes advertisement that's on the outside of the building. I love. So they're climbing down this neon sign going, it's okay, there's just another 6 letters to go. It's a very funny film that I think, going back to what Rob said, has a sense of, it feels too much to say melancholy at the end, but there is a kind of wistfulness in the final scene that you would not expect from a film that has gone out of its way to take nothing seriously prior to this. I think it's fascinating. I don't know how well distributed Delle Iglesias films are in this country. I know there was a version of Action Mutante put out on DVD a few years back.
I had 900 Bullets on, which is his anti-spaghetti western, which is fun.
Right.
And also The Bar, which was a success at Fright Fest a few years ago, was recently on Netflix. If it still is, I don't know. But regardless, I'd recommend you checking out The Bar, because it is his best movie. And I've seen quite a few of them. I'd be able to comfortably say that, I think.
Right. That's interesting. I'm glad that he's still plugging away. I think there are things in Day of the Beast that you can say are typical of this kind of strain of Spanish cinema, for the Buñuels, the Almodóvars, the maybe Del Toro's Spanish films as well. The anti-clericalism, the subversive humour, the sense of very, very dark comedy, all that is present and correct, but there is an awful lot that feels like Delle Iglesias' own. And there is a kind of energy and gleeful tastelessness to it that reminded me of early Sam Raimi. And for me, that is very high praise indeed. So I do recommend people check that out if they're looking for something very different to watch after the Queen's speech. Alex Delle Iglesias, Day of the Beast.
And for me, finishing off this relay race of anti-Christmas movies, I decided to ask myself, what is the weirdest Christmas movie that I can find on experimental terms? What is the Christmas movie that seems to be directed by, and I like to describe this movie as this, if it's directed by Jean-Luc Godard, it's Jean-Luc Godard's very Christmassy punk movie, but it's a retelling of both Doctor Strangelove and Paris, Texas.
Yes.
Yeah, this is 1983's Emerald Cities, directed by Rick Schmid. Graham's had the fortune of seeing this film as well.
I certainly have, yes.
Yes, and I thought it would be a good idea to talk about this film, considering that I never heard of this film before, after it was plucked out of obscurity by NWR, which we shall go on in a little bit. But first, let me just dissect what Emerald Cities is, because it is an absolutely strange film, a strange item to behold, really. But it's set at the Death Valley, somewhere in America, I believe. And it tells the story of this father and daughter. The father, who's played by Ed Nyland, is essentially an impersonator of Santa Claus. So, he's often
work.
It's very seasonal, yeah. Because by that I mean he mostly sits around, lounges about his caravan in the middle of the Death Valley desert, really. And one of the things that connects both the daughter and this impersonator Santa together is that they have this television set. Now, this television set, one of the things that's wrong with it is that it broadcasts all its images in an emerald green colour, so hence the title. And then it also dissects, and that goes into, political themes in of itself, or TV broadcasts. So there's an awful lot of footage from Ronald Reagan's era, when he first stepped into the presidency, a lot of footage about weaponization, for example. And the daughter doesn't really want this green transmission television set, so instead she wants to go out and find a black and white television set, and essentially abandons the impersonator Santa Claus. And it must be his duty to go and find her once again. Now, it's a very hard film to pin down, Emerald Cities, because I mentioned before, it's deeply obscure. I mean, it's the kind of film that, yes, of course, Nicholas Winding Refn would discover by some odd chance. But the weird thing is that it's an oddly endearing film, really. I mean, despite it being... Because it is practically a film that's all over the place. I mean, there's... like I was saying, there's a lot of political ideology on its mind, so hence the Ronald Reagan comparisons together. There's also the catch-ups with Ed Nyland and where he's trying to find his daughter.
Yeah.
And there's also, interspliced with this all, is this underlying sense of punk rock. Okay? Yeah. And the punk rock sequences are probably my favourite scenes in the whole film, because they are some of the most rugged sequences in the whole movie. Where you'll just get these snippets of like bands known as Flipper and the Mutants, badly playing rock music. So bad, in fact, that you cannot make out the lyrics, so Schmid's just plastered over the image, like the lyrics to them.
That bit.
Yeah.
Whoa. Don't be shaming 80s punk here, Aidan.
Oh. I'm not shaming 80s punk.
I feel
I'm
like
enjoying
a rift is growing at Christmas of all times.
Oh dear.
But I really do love these sequences, because they just bring this energy towards the film where you kind of get the sense that it is a bit meandering when it gets to like Ed Nyland's arc, really. And Ed Nyland is particularly actually quite fun in this, because you get the sense of him being like this very grouchy, very stern figure, very much similar to actually like Harry Dean Stanton's character in Paris, Texas. But I guess the difference is that there's just this underlying biting sense of humor towards him. I love the bit where he encounters like this fella in like this parking lot, and the fella just boils down the history of his student performance career.
Yeah.
And then essentially, he just kind of switches off Ed Nyland's character, and then, immediately he just goes, just listening to this long, arduous, rambling history from this person, and just goes, okay, right, I'm done with you, bye. And then the fella on the other end just immediately goes, all right, fine, it was nice to see you. It's a very undercurrent sense of humour. I found it very hard to grasp in certain areas. I mean, especially towards the latter half of the film. It's also got sequences involving vox pops in them as well.
Yeah.
With what Schmid ultimately does with this is that he asks people, do they believe in Santa Claus? The film opens with actually a segment, it'd be fair to say that it opens on a segment of someone really badly reading "You Better Watch Out," before it like intros in fully into like this very like fourth wall breaking moment with the daughter character explaining like this Academy Award kind of thing. Bear with me; it is a bit experimental and a bit zany.
Yeah,
but on top of that, these vox pops do add a lot of flavour to this whole thing, because it kind of like boils down like the state of 1983 in this time period, really. Because of course the connections to Ronald Reagan, weaponization, the Cold War. It's an odd hodgepodge of ideas, but it weirdly works for a weird reason that I can't quite put my finger on. But I enjoyed its energy. I enjoyed the humour of it. There's another bit where Ed Nyland is in this car with this person who's giving them like ham and mushroom sandwiches. And then he just turns his head, it like points the other direction and turns back. And the guy in the car is like put on this weird mask that I can't quite describe with the eyes like popping out with like horns. And it's just an incredibly hard film to pin down. And it's incredibly interesting. And I mentioned before that this came out on Nicholas Winding Refn's by NWR program. And I think we should go into a little bit with by NWR, because this is his subscription-free I think we should. You know what? But by NWR is Nicholas Winding Refn's free subscribe program, where he restores like an awful lot of any film from the 1950s and 60s that has the word exploitation at the end of the word. So exploitation, sexploitation, Christploitation. I'm not joking.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of them aren't really worth talking about because they're just really kind of really rugged, raw, often quite horrible in a lot of areas and quite tasteless. It's the kind of thing that you do think, well, why are you restoring this exactly?
I think one thing that by NWR really reminds me is that a lot of these old exploitation movies with outrageous posters and the likes are really boring when you get to watch them. They'll have 3 or 4 extremely nasty bits sandwiched between the most blatant filler you have seen in your life.
That is so true. I mean, I mean, just to give this a bit of background context, I also saw, I think it was The Burning World just recently.
The Burning Hell?
Which is a Christploitation. Yes. Burning Hell, no, sorry.
That was it,
sorry.
Yeah.
Which was one of these Christploitation movies with a person known as, I think it's like Ernest P. Perkle or something. Which just sounds like a pastor who comes straight out of like, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, really.
Yes.
And you know, and that's the film that's trying to condemn like a lot of like people to hell, really, or people who don't believe the way of God. It'll graphically show like this depiction of hell, really. And that's used rather sparingly, because a lot of the time it's just Perkle just shouting, going, "Oh, blah, 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 and if you don't do this, hell will torment your soul. You will burn in hell for 1,000,000 years."
So like my old geography teacher. My old geography teacher does that in the local town centre, which is always fun. I remember you. You used to teach me geography. Hello, Mr. Anderson.
It's good to see your career's going well.
Yeah, clearly. Teaching kids, clearly he's good on his mental state and fibre. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the film aren't worth talking about altogether. And for Emerald Cities to come out, essentially as the jewel from all this weird rubbish, is kind of saying a lot, really, because it's got a lot of bite to it. It's got a lot of energy, a lot of experimentation. And it's kind of a shame because Rick Schmid never did anything after this. I mean, he kind of fell into obscurity afterwards. He did like 2 other movies before Emerald Cities, before like falling deeply into I guess into obscurity.
You say falling. What you mean is that he remained exactly as obscure as he always was.
Yeah, I would say so. Until Nicholas Winding Refn, put it for free up on his site. So yeah, I would recommend that. I mean, if you want something, like I was saying before, if you're interested in like, experimental cinema, punk music, definitely. Weird retellings of like films that we already described. Because I also mentioned that they actually use a clip from Dr. Strangelove as well.
Yes.
So it does like, it's an awful lot of like montage sequences built upon montage sequences, and I really do appreciate his political commentary in this, Rick Schmid, because it's not like in, just to put it, compared to a recent example, the scene in Burning, where you have Donald Trump on the television, and that's one of my pet peeves that I have, because when obviously in like drama films like use something like to put on the television, something political, you just immediately think, what's the connection? I don't quite get this. And I got that heavy sense of Burning. With Schmid, he does play it up. So you'll just get a snippet of Ronald Reagan, and then it'll just like filter out into like a punk rock musical sequence. And then it'll filter out into like, missiles being sent over like the ocean or something, which says just far more than what anything Burning could ever do, really. But that's my sense, and I know that's controversial, but I don't care. I wasn't a fan of Burning.
No, neither were we.
The 80s splashy with scissors, or the boring Korean one?
The boring Korean one.
Yeah, that was boring.
It would be a bit ahead of the curve if the 80s slasher with scissors had a clip of President Trump on TV.
Well, weird predictions come from weird places.
It's true. So now it's time for best home releases of the year. And For me, shall I start off?
And I think we'll.
Yeah, go on.
Should we do it the way we've done it? Like me, Graham, Aidan.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Yeah, works either way. Yeah.
It's an established circle what we've got here.
Yeah.
Rules. I don't know. How many are we doing each, though? There's the question.
I've got a couple.
I've got a couple as well, actually. Yeah.
So we do one each and then move around. Do you think that works?
I would just sort of do both of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Usually, when you look at the sort of publications that talk about the best movies of the year, best home releases of the year, they always talk about box sets or I don't know, marquee releases, don't they? And my picks aren't really that at all. Mine are three quite small. Well, I guess one could be called a pretty decent release, but the other two certainly not. The first one is from Arrow Academy, and it was a massive revelation for me when I saw it. But it was The Big Clock, starring Charles Lawton.
Ah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He was always one of those actors who I've been told good, I've been assured good, but I've never really seen how good. And in that, it's a great movie, rocket-powered movie. But the thing which really sells it for me is apparently Charles Lawton was gay in a Hollywood system that hated anybody who was gay, frankly. And in it extra with, I think it was Simon Callow, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
He said part of his performance there, he said, his opposite number was ardently anti-gay. So in every scene that they shared together, Charles Lawton was sort of goading him and teasing him and got like a better performance out of him. And it's just, as far as the context and as far as an extra of a really good movie, it stood out for me since the moment I saw it earlier on this year. The other two was from Bob Balaban, which was a surprise to me, because I've always known him as that guy from Wes Anderson's movies.
That guy from everything.
Well, when I think of him, I always think of he's the narrator in Moonrise Kingdom. That's the immediate image.
Yeah.
But he directed a film called Parents, which is a comedy cannibal movie. White Picket Fence America. That's halfway between John Waters and David Lynch. And it was one of those, where have you been all my life? Sort of moments. Which was a real thrill. And the last one was When a Stranger Calls, for having, like, it's one of those things where you see a scene that's used a lot in horror movies, and you see the one where it was originated. It's like the case in question here is that phone call in The Scream with Drew Barrymore. That original scene with Carol Kane is, I think I wrote it in my review, but it's the scariest scene in any horror movie I've ever seen, and I've seen quite a few.
Yes.
So, and Second Sight have really lavished it. I mean, Second Sight aren't as prolific as they used to be, but when they put something out, they put it out. I don't know what that means or why I said it like that, but you get where I'm coming from. There were the three big highlights for me this year, though.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
I've got. I
like how Second Sight are now. I like how Second Sight are now currently going into like recent releases that never got a Blu-ray release in this country. Like,
yeah, because they've put out Upgrade, haven't they? Upgrade and a few other bits and places.
Well, for me, I've got one of those big prestigious box set releases that Rob was complaining about.
I never got any this year.
This year was the year when Criterion UK put out the Coca trilogy, Abbas Kiarostami's essentially name-making series of 3 films. The first of which, Where is the Friend's House, is a really beautiful, simple, down-to-earth, neo-realist story. But the other 2, And Life Goes On and Through the Cherry Trees, through the Olive Trees, really deepen and complicate the very idea of trying to reflect reality in film. They are hugely significant, weirdly blissful, And it's just lovely having them available after Harvey Weinstein sat on the rights to them for about 20 years. I know it's not the worst thing Harvey Weinstein did. We now know. It's just, another piece of evidence for the prosecution, I think. If that comes up in his court case, I think it'll be an easy sentence.
Maybe he lost them in his really baggy coat.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe they just got stuck under a fold of belly.
No, I mean, that picture, isn't there, where he's clearly faking.
What's that one?
Oh, well, I won't get into that, because it's... Look it up for later.
Okay.
There's a recent picture of him with a walking stick and a really ill-fitting coat. He can afford a fitting coat. Liar.
I didn't notice the baggy coat. I was struck by the sympathy walking stick. Yes. The other thing that I'd like to name is the BFI's reissue of Richard Lester's How I Won the War. A flawed but really fascinating film, and I think a triumph of the BFI's method of putting extras together, which is usually to deepen your understanding of the social context of the film rather than just pull out things about the director, interviews with the actor. I mean, it's got those as well, but the 4 kind of counterculture shorts themed around anti-war and pop music and other key issues from the film are both really excellent in their own right and deepen your understanding of the context and the world that Lester was making his film in. And it just goes to show that, in the Netflix era, there is still an important place for Blu-ray extras.
Also, on that note, it seems there's been a turn in the tide, really, how people aren't as enamoured with streaming, and the number of people who are having restarting their collection of movies is on the climb back up again. So that's a win, I think.
I think that's heartening. I mean, my thing about streaming, I like it, but I don't like the idea that if I fall in love with a film, I'm just being allowed access to it by a company who can take it away at any minute.
And the fact that I think over the past few years, the collection of movies that Netflix has is 40% the size it used to be. So,
right,
there's measurable metrics that they're not really treating movies all that well. Yeah. Streaming platforms.
Yeah. Shall I move on?
Pick up from that downer, eh?
Yeah.
Well, let me talk about a film that's equally down, which is Indicator's release of Alan Clark's Scum, which, reviewed on episode, I can't remember, it was the same episode that we did Toy Story 4, which to jump from that film to this is just absolutely mad. But no, I think the thing that I appreciate most about what Indicator do, even if, their identity is like completely all over the place, really, in terms of, I'll do a bit here, a bit there, and classic American cinema there, British cinema there, blah, 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 blah. But the thing is with that release of Scum is just how stacked it is. In terms of course, not only in special features, but he have a release of a film that was deemed controversial when it first came out for the BBC. And then when it came out in 1979, it was equally just riding home this torrent of anger and rage that let's face it, that you'll see every day now in Britain. It's just, I just think it's tremendous release, and it's absolutely stacked and featuring interviews with all the cast, a few documentaries, commentaries, everything. And I think it's really one of my favourite releases that they've put out, really. The other couple are 2 second-run releases that I think deserve some mentions again. And they're both films that Graham reviewed on the show. The first is Dawson City Frozen Time, which, honest to God, is one of the most hypnotic documentaries I think I've ever seen, really.
Yeah.
It's just incredibly beautiful, made mostly out of nitrate film. And I really am wanting to see more of Bill Morrison's work simply because of that, because it is just such a staggering achievement of where he gives like all this breathing space to let this damaged nitrate film stock breathe once again. The other film is, of course, a film that Graham reviewed a bit earlier on, so not that long ago. It is The Emperor's Naked Army Marches On, which, I mean, Yeah, I mean, I would describe it more in detail, but honestly, for any documentary lovers out there, definitely see it because it is just blimey.
Yeah, there are not the words. We've tried, but there are not the words.
Trey angry. There you go. I've done it for you.
Yeah.
It sounds classy because I butchered French while doing it.
Just like Del Boy.
Yes. Just like Del.
Right, so that's our first Minisode of the year. Join us again on Christmas Eve, I believe it'll be, when we're counting down numbers 10 to 6 on our favourite release of 2019, and also talking about our favourite discoveries of the year. But until then, that's been your lot from Cinema Eclectica. I've been Graham.
I've been Rob.
And I've been Nathan.
See you soon.